Welcome everyone to another video on the artist's way.
The artist's way.
This, just to be clear, this is based on my workshop, Unleash Your Creativity, using Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way as the required text. So today we are in week 2 and we are talking about recovering a sense of identity. And today I have a few topics I want to cover. We already talked about self-worth, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that today in relationship to a few more things like believing in yourself, anger and how that fits in, passion, and audacity. And so I'm just going to kind of lay it out there, and then David will jump in.
I have a question.
Okay.
Since this is talking about identity, and identity is how we recognize ourselves, do you think it would be appropriate to let the audience know what our names are?
Yes. I'm Yvonne Davis. This is David Steele. And we're from the Rocky Mountain Compassionate Communication Network.
Among other places.
Yes, we do come from other places too and go other places. So anyway, alrighty, so let me just lay it out for you. So we talked about self-worth, and self-worth is extremely important. I cannot even begin to tell you how important it is. I'm just going to give you a little snippet to try to illuminate this, and it won't even come close, but it might help. I've been noticing in the past few days when I walk past someone, particularly someone that I might know or work with in the corporate world and see on a fairly regular basis. Generally more that than just, for example, a stranger. And if I happen to walk past them, I've been astonished by how many people don't look me in the eye. And I just suddenly started to become really aware of that in the past few days, because if I'm walking down a hallway, for example, I will generally be standing tall with my head up and looking forward. And if there are people in my vicinity, I have my eyes open in such a way that I try to have an open, welcoming energy about me. And, sometimes say hi. But I've noticed that a lot of people, whether they realize it or not, when they are walking past someone, again, I don't know if they're actually consciously aware of it, but there seems to be some intention to look away. And yeah, like David's kind of showing that, like looking away, looking down, almost to like pretending like the other person doesn't exist. And I wondered, why is that? Why do people act that way? But the answer came to me fairly quickly. It's because there's some fear around vulnerability, because looking someone in the eyes is very vulnerable. And so that's actually very difficult for a lot of people. But the other interesting thing is to watch the way someone walks. Like, for example, usually you can really tell if they're walking in front of you and you're behind them. Is their body like straight when they're walking forward? Or are they sort of like, have you ever noticed how some people, their heads are kind of tipped down like that?
Huh? Yes, that used to be me.
Yeah, I'm sure it used to be me too.
I used to.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So, and that's a symptom of a person whose self-worth isn't quite what we might hope for, at least for ourselves. As you probably know, if you're familiar with NVC, we're actually not into fixing people.
Nonviolent communication, NVC.
Yeah.
Marshall Rosenberg,
yes.
NVC, nonviolent communication.
Yes. Thank you for that plug. Yeah, so we want to share with you our knowledge and experience, especially our knowledge of nonviolent communication. But we're not, it's like you learn about not leaning forward and trying to fix people. Like, I gotta fix this person, Okay. Okay, so yeah, so you can observe something like that, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do anything about it, just observe. So I've been observing that lately.
So ask a question.
Ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
Okay, wait, let me first say a little bit more about how these things tie together.
Okay.
And then you can
I'm going to take a drink of coffee.
Okay. So
this is not a plug.
Yeah, so the issue of self-worth is important because if if it's scary enough just to look someone in the eye or to stand up straight when you're walking, imagine how scary it is to really put yourself out there in a vulnerable way, like with your creative expression. So that's why self-worth is so incredibly important. The other thing I wanted to mention in conjunction with that was the idea of believing yourself, because you hear this in the New Age movement, believe in yourself, believe in yourself, believe in yourself. And I used to think that was true for a number of reasons that we'll probably talk about more in this program later. But a certain point came when I realized that believing yourself may not be enough. And Rick Jarrow, who did a program called the Ultimate Anti-Career Guide, which I'll put a link to in the description box, said you don't have to believe in yourself, which is really radical. So that might bring up a lot of questions that we'll want to explore. And maybe you'll have something to say on that. But let me just finish showing how these things tie together. So anger can be a really useful energy. And most people in our culture are actually afraid of energy afraid of that energy of anger, because that represents their power. And, in a lot of ways, we've been disempowered. So, Rick Jarrett also says, whenever people would ask him, when am I going to get out there in the world and do the work that I'm called to do? He says, when you get angry enough, or when you get passionate enough. And I have actually discovered that even that's not enough, because I've been angry many times in my life, and it's still, it's taken me a long time to break through many of my blocks and barriers and internal obstacles, and have the courage to put myself out there and do whatever I felt called to do. But those energies of anger and passion can be really helpful. So for me, it comes down to audacity. Sometimes you just have to have the audacity to say, you know what, this is what I feel called to do, and I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter if I think I'm good enough. It doesn't matter if I believe in myself or what I'm doing. It doesn't matter if I'm angry enough. I am just going to do it. So I'll let you jump in.
So you're saying that we need a capacity for audacity.
Yes. If you want to break through your blocks, you need a capacity for audacity. And Julie
so
Cameron
where does that come from? How do you cultivate that capacity for audacity?
Oh boy, now that's a really good question. And let me touch on what Julie Cameron says about audacity, which I think really helped me to understand why it's important. She said, you can meet a lot of really talented people. And I once read a book, I think the author is Elizabeth George, I'm not sure. And she said, if you have talent, which I also call skill because it can be developed, and if you have discipline and if you have passion, you'll definitely get published. And what I found over the years, that even that's not enough. Sometimes you have to have the audacity to just put yourself out there. And that's one of the things that Cameron says, that you can meet a lot of really talented people, a lot of people who are disciplined and dedicated and have passion for their work, and yet they might produce a really incredible piece of work, and the world will never see it. It'll never get published or never get produced. Whereas there can be a lot of stuff out there that's rather mediocre, and yet it gets published. So, or it gets, produced to put on the screen. And so, and I'm not saying that every work has to be brilliant, but it does raise the question, if someone's work is out there, if it's good, then we understand why, and we're thankful for it. But if it's mediocre, then, it does bring up the question, why? Why them? Why not me? Why am I not putting my work out there? What's holding me back from that? And so I'm suggesting maybe the answer to that question is, you need a capacity for audacity. So I don't know, can we come up with some strategies for how to develop audacity, or do you have something more to say?
Yes. So when you have a capacity for audacity, are you in Rhapsody? And I do have something to say. One of the reasons, there's basically two reasons, and they're the same reason inverted. I think one of the reasons people hold themselves back is they don't want to do harm. They don't want to hurt someone. Yeah. They don't want to disappoint someone. They don't, and a big one is, I don't want to be, for me, I don't want to be more successful than my parents. Mm-hmm. And so I hold myself back. Mm-hmm. The other one is, I don't want to discover that I'm really an imposter. As long as I don't quite do it, I can pretend I'm pretty good at it, or that it's worthwhile, but I don't want to really let the rubber meet the road, because what if I discover that I'm worthless after all? Mm. And I'd rather just not have to deal with that confrontation. Mm. And so I think those are the two things that inhibit our audacious nature. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I'm glad that you mentioned the one about, we don't want to hurt other people. We don't want to offend other people or make them uncomfortable. And so that can be one of the reasons why we might be holding ourselves back. Like for David, even though his parents have passed away, there can still be that child self inside that thinks, I can't be more successful than my parents because, it'll be dishonoring my parents. And that can be very powerful, and it's real. And it's not something to just say, oh, you shouldn't feel that way, because that part of us is very real, and we want to listen and embrace that part, and let it help us to understand what's important to it, so that we can integrate that into ourselves, and not shun it, not push it back into the shadow. So anyway, I want to share, mine is similar to that, which is I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, because, if I think that I guess a way that I would say it is just a story that goes like this. Who am I to think that I have anything of value to say to other people? Who am I to think that anyone wants to hear what I have to say? Who am I? And if I did succeed, then I might they might look up to me, and then they would think, how come she is successful and I'm not? And I mean, it on one hand, it's just a story I tell myself, but on the other hand, there's some validity to it, because I have literally had more than one person come to me directly and tell me that they felt threatened by my success. And I have to work through that. I have to work with my own feelings of discomfort around I'm not causing someone to feel threatened, but I know that that's stimulated in them.
And so I'm still sensitive to that, even though I know I still have to continue moving forward.
That really ties into the earlier program we did on identity.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to be carrying other people's burdens, it's very difficult to be audacious.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
There's another reason, I thought of another reason that people aren't audacious. What if I work really, 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 really hard and I put my passion and my everything into something and my God, it's a spectacular success. Now what? Oh shit, I've got to come up with another spectacular success. I don't know, man. That's a heavy burden, you know. So we often are afraid of being successful because then people expect us to be successful. Mm. And if I know I'm an imposter and I'm not really successful and it was just a fluke, then it'd be even more embarrassing when people discover that I really don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. There's something you said, though, that was so powerful. I wonder if we can say it again about, carrying other people's burdens. Yeah, I just thought, like, wow, that was really powerful. You can't be audacious if you're carrying other people's burdens.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're being audacious and you're not carrying other people's burdens, life becomes an invitation. If you want, what you're doing becomes an invitation. If you want to work together, if you want to join with me, if we want to co-create, that's great. And if you don't want to, that's great too. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a vested interest in an outcome about how what I do impacts you. Mm. If I'm thinking that my impact has to be A, B, and C, then what if it's D, E, and F? Mm-hmm. And so it's much easier to just have my focus on what it is that I'm doing and creating and let the chips fall where they may. Mm-hmm. Or as has been popular in self-help circles as the catchy phrase that symbolizes that, what you think of me is none of my business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So remember that as you continue to move through this program, your work is in front of you. And I saw this beautiful card that the artwork was so descriptive. I wish that I had it right now. Maybe I'll bring it in on another occasion. But there was a person, an artist, who was sort of like this over their piece of work. It was sort of look like a piece of pottery, sculpting it, and the focus was really loving and really just so present. And then there was some beautiful, colorful, like dazzling imagery above the head that was kind of like the vision that this person was putting into this work of art. But you could see where the focus was, where the presence was, and the connection. And that spoke to me so clearly about why it's important for us to stay focused on what's in front of us and not give our energy away to, well, what will people think of this? What will people think of me? Will I hurt someone's feelings? Will I offend someone? Now, I'm not saying that we just go out there brusquely, inconsiderate of anyone's thoughts and feelings, but there's a balance there, you know, and you don't want to tip so far in the direction of what will other people think and feel that you deny what you feel called to do. And that's not just the work itself, it's also the time and the resources that it takes.
So it's, I think a different way of saying that is expectation. Because if we have an expectation of the impact that our expression will have, then we want to start managing that expression. Mm-hmm. And if we try to manage it, it's never quite free. Mm-hmm. So when we create, when we express, it starts with an inward. And that's kind of like the inhale. We go inside, we tap the inspiration, but then we want to set that free. And that's like the exhale. And it's a gift to reality, so to speak, to other people's realities. And at that point, we can't control it. It's no longer quite ours. Mm-hmm. And if we think we have to control it, we're going to be reticent. I knew a incredibly skilled painter, incredibly skilled. And he had stacks and stacks of paintings that were really good, but he couldn't let them go. No one else got to enjoy them. No one else got to appreciate them. They ended up having no impact because he kept them to himself. And he gave me a painting once, and then he was angry about the way that I framed it, and he took it back. And because he had that expectation of how I should present it. And as far as I know, it languishes somewhere, and it's not seen. It's not living. So I have one other thought, but I want to know if you wanted to comment at all.
Yeah, I liked what David said, because that is something, when you become a teacher, you, and I think it's specifically about this kind of work that David and I do, you really have to let go of the outcome. You give as much as you can, and then you have to let it go. I remember a friend, when I first published The Power of Manifestation, he read the book, and he decided to quit his job, and he was earning $100,000 a year, and open up a bar. And I was like, a bar? Why would you open a bar? And David said to me, you know what? You can't control what other people do with your work. You inspired him to do something he felt called to do, and you can't control that. It's not yours. After you give it away, it's not yours.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it moves into ours. But that's how creativity works, because we're all stimulated, inspired, motivated by what other people have taken a risk to present, and it influences us, and we're just passing on. Paying it forward is a phrase today. Inspiration I've received from other people. I imbibe it, I slather myself in it, and then something comes out that certainly has influenced me, but whatever comes out is uniquely me, and I give that to other people, and what they do with it, I can't control. So that's a big, big part.
Yeah. And that definitely speaks to this topic that we've been discussing this week of recovering a sense of identity, truly understanding the difference between the self and other. And in this material plane, that is a reality. There is a self and there is an other. And it's important to have the distinction and to know who you are and to value who you are and to let others be who they are. And I guess that pretty much sums it up for today. Anything else you want to say?
Life is short, and remember that. If you don't do it, it won't happen. And so try a risk. I'll bet you survive it.
Yes. All right, so we'll end it on that note. Take a risk today. You probably won't regret it. And so just as a reminder, if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe to our channel. Click like if you like this video.
I subscribed.
I even subscribed, I think.
I clicked like.
I click like too.
I rang the bell. I'm getting ahead.
Okay. Ring the bell for notifications.
I rang the bell. I get notification.
And make comments in the box below, because we really want to hear what's going on for you. It's we enjoy that energetic feedback. We send it out there, and we can't control what happens afterward. It's out of our hands, but that doesn't mean we don't enjoy some feedback. So if you have any comments, please put them in the comment boxes below. Anything else? Okay. In that case, we will see you tomorrow.